Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, everyone, thanks for coming. We had a special school committee meeting scheduled for today. And this meeting is being recorded. So comments and statements from the public. Anyone? All right, first on the agenda, informational agenda. Andrew, you want to?
Come in and see.
Sure.
Thank you for meeting with us. I'll go in order if that's easiest. Number one is our concern about the use of professional status within our district for our teachers. I have the law printed out from the Massachusetts website stating that professional status is granted for teachers who have taught in a school district for the three previous consecutive school years, and they are entitled to professional status. Every correspondence that I've had with the superintendent, he inserts the word full consecutive school years. And it is not a present issue at the moment for a particular teacher, but it has been in every single year since I've been here. And I think our previous president can attest to that. And so I'd like a firmer definition of where he is interpreting that from, so that it doesn't continue to be an issue and waste our time and his time and everybody's time. I don't know if you guys can shed any light on that.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is professional status defined in your contract?
Off the top of my head, I'm going to say no.
Go ahead, Mike.
You mentioned in your opening remarks you had a definition of professional status. Is that something that we have in our packets, Dr. Cullen?
No.
No. Okay.
Do you want me to pass this around, or?
Whose definition is that?
This is printed off from the general laws of the state of Massachusetts,
Okay.
Chapter 71, Section 41.
That's enough for me. Thank you.
Can I see that?
I saw you shaking your head.
No, I wasn't shaking my head. They changed the sign-in for the computer, so I can't even get in. I did check with our attorney. The attorney has indicated that it is correct. The law does not define it specifically as a one full year for every one of those 3 years. The concern here is that there's additional governing law called case law that gets determined when questions like this rise to the level of a lawsuit or a question that goes to the courts, and the courts make a decision. Based on those decisions, from that point on, what those judges have ruled basically become known as case law. And in the case law, the judges have defined a year as a full year. So I go by what the lawyers that we hire tell me is in the case law. There's other case law that further defines some exemptions based on maternity leaves, which is an exclusion to the 3 consecutive years. So there's a lot more than just the law as it's printed on the books.
Dr. Carl, give me an example of, well, just give me an example of something that would break that full 3 year definition.
Usually it's been considered to be if you go on unpaid status, there's a break in service. So, or if you don't start the year at the beginning of the year, or you don't end the year along with everybody else, so you don't go the whole 185 days that's in your contract. What your contract defines what a year is. So if the contract says you work 185 days, you're supposed to work 185 days, that's your year. If there's a break in the 185 days, for whatever reason, you have to figure out, okay, is this an exclusion such as a maternity leave? If it's a maternity leave,
All right, let's start with that one. What is, for maternity leave, what do we do in that case?
in a maternity leave, the courts have specified that if you go and you have a maternity leave and you go into unpaid status because of your maternity leave, that particular year does not count towards your accruing professional status, those 3 consecutive years. But it does not restart the clock. So in other words, you come in, you teach for a year, full complete year. Year 2, halfway through the year, you go off on maternity leave, you stay out, past however many sick days you have or FMLA allows you to have. So you go into unpaid status. At that point, year 2 does not count. But that means when you return from your maternity leave, you don't start again on year 1. When you return from maternity
All of year 2 on that example wouldn't count, or just the 3
Doesn't count.
or
It's like it
however
never
many
happened.
months that you're out on maternity
No,
leave?
it's like it never happened. The whole year didn't happen.
It can count because it's up to the superintendent's discretion. He can grant, after a year of teaching, he can grant a teacher professional status. And we have had situations in this district where the teacher was out on maternity leave, took an extra day unpaid, and that year did not count for that teacher. And in the spirit of the law, I don't think we're applying the spirit of the law in that situation. We're trying to avoid giving professional status for as long as possible. And if we can find a way to not grant it, we're going to find a way to not grant it.
Melissa?
Just so I make sure I'm understanding this correctly, someone goes out on maternity leave, so they use up all their sick time during maternity leave, come back, and then use a sick day, unpaid because they've used their time saved for maternity leave. They're then ineligible for professional leave for that 1 year because of that 1 day.
They're ineligible for
Professional
status due to that. I guess it's defined as a break in service for that year.
Has there been situations where that has occurred?
I know there's been staff who have gone on unpaid status, and yes, we have counted it as a break in service. However, the one you mentioned is a little different. If it is during the time that you're considered to be on leave for maternity based on the contract language that we have, you're allowed to take up to the rest of the year. So when you mention you come back the next year and you don't have enough sick days,
No, not the next year, the same year.
or the same year. If you were to come back the same year and you've come back and you don't have sick days, you do have alternatives. For example, you can ask for the sick bank to kick in some days, in which case you would be still on paid leave, so that you could then be able to consider that not a break in service, but you'd have to go through the sick bank.
The sick bank allows for 1 day at a time.
I
Allows
think
up
you're
for
up to 30 days.
You have to apply for it.
And is that also up to the superintendent's discretion as far as approving that sick bank? Or
Sick bank is completely separate from the superintendent. It's a team of people from the union plus 1 member of the school committee.
a teacher that exhausts all his or her sick time, say a first year teacher. They exhaust all their sick time the first couple of months of school. Just their sick time, so that all sick days they have on the books, or however many that is. At the end of the year, they're out another day that they haven't accumulated or whatever. Would that kick them? That would start the clock over at that point.
If they are not, if they're not eligible for sick bank and they have no other way to do it but to take unpaid leave, yes.
And that's all up to the superintendent's discretion? Or is that,
That's what the law allows.
obviously, we don't see it.
You can obviously negotiate different contract language that would allow for any of these things. My concern is that such negotiations should happen at the negotiating table. This is a negotiating year. If you want to change the way you define or want to create exceptions for 1 day, 5 days, 6 days, where you want to draw the line.
I'm not trying to negotiate anything, I'm just trying to see where we are. Michelle?
Can you speak louder?
Sure, you guys can't hear me?
Yeah, we can't hear out here. Thank
Is
you.
there any speakers? No, there's no speakers.
Yeah, you guys try to squeeze in. Michelle?
Do we have anything from the attorney on this?
As far as this meeting,
No, as far as this issue.
As far as this issue?
not that I've seen.
The superintendent just offered the attorney's opinion.
I know that. I was just wondering if we had in writing anything from Andy, that's all.
Michael?
It's more of a point of information, Mr. Chairman. I see these 5 items are listed as informational agendas items. Are we not taking any action today? Or I would propose that we call this an agenda and make decisions if
Well, I think that's where we have to be careful, Michael, but
I think we have to be careful
I
of
think-
limiting the school committee's ability to make decisions. By listing it as informational, we could make a motion to allow for action tonight. That's why I asked that question.
Carolina?
Yeah, I just have concerns that this is potential contract negotiations, and this is not the table to be doing that at.
I think from our federation standpoint, we might tend to agree with you in some aspects. In other aspects, our larger concern is that we're inserting language that is not in the law.
But according to the superintendent's representations, there is case law, and case law further defines what the words from the statute mean.
I think the superintendent would confirm this, but I've asked to see or what he was referring to, and I haven't been given that information.
It just seems odd to me that we're even arguing this. You would think that over the years this would have been settled somewhere. Melissa? Yeah, you can.
I think maybe it would be helpful if Dr. Calvi, you could forward that information that was provided from the attorney so that people can have that information, and then if they're informed, I think in absence of having that, it's difficult to even, comment, because the law is stating something specific, but then there's this case law that I guess supersedes it, but without saying that,
Doesn't supersede it, it further defines it. It defines what this word means and that word means and this word means by cases being brought in front of the courts and the courts deciding, we're saying that this means that. And so you get this body of cases that further define the words that were put in the statute.
I would say that's true in cases where it's not defined, so I think everyone involved needs to do a better job defining the words.
I will forward that information
Michael?
to
I agree, that's why I asked for
the
it.
school committee.
Yeah, I think when it reaches the point of coming before the school committee, we come equipped with being able to make decisive decisions. I believe we need to follow Mass General Law, regardless of any other interpretation, and I think as a school committee, we need to commit to Mass General Law the way it's written, and we can go further with this discussion, and certainly I would hope it continues at the administrative level.
Andrew, you said that there's no one that's actually being affected by this right now.
I do not know of anybody at this present moment.
Anything else on that issue?
can we
sorry.
bring it back at another meeting or something? Once that information comes?
Absolutely. It's your prerogative, our prerogative. Yeah.
Okay.
Next issue is extra duty pay. You may or may not be familiar with, the teachers are, through our contracts, allowed to create curriculum, attend trainings, conferences, during the summer, after school hours, during the school year, on weekends, for $30 an hour. We attended trainings, did curriculum works, worked with students during the summer. It was approved by our supervisors and the superintendent. I would say at this point, at least half of it has not been paid to our members. State law, and again I have state law, states that an employee who has worked for a period of less than 5 days, hereinafter called a casual employee, shall within 7 days after the termination of a such period, meaning pay period, pay the wages earned by such casual employee during such period.
Which, can you state which law?
Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 149, Section 148.
Andrew, when you said about half, how many people is that?
How many people, or I would say 30 teachers between the elementary school and the middle school
have still not been
have still not been paid.
Okay.
I'll use myself as an example. I did more than one thing during the summer. Actually, I did 3 things during the summer.
When you say the summer, June, July?
Starting in
I'm sorry,
as
July,
early
August.
as beginning of August. And all through August, I did at least 3 things, totaling a total of 16 hours. I believe I've been paid for 6 of them. So teachers have multiple things that they did. They haven't been paid for them. And the law states that they need to be paid within 7 days. And the district has paid some of the money, has not paid at least half of it. I don't have firm numbers because the paperwork involved in it can confuse anybody. Because they're bill pay forms. In order to be paid, we fill out a bill pay form. We write down what we did, we hand it to our supervisor, who's usually our building principal. They sign it and send it off to admin. Once it's signed by our supervisor, that's the district, they represent the district. It's out of our hands. And when they're signing it, they're saying this bill pay form is correct, you did these hours, we'll pay you. I've met with the superintendent at least twice in person regarding this issue. I believe it's 3 times. We've corresponded by email at least 4 times to my records. There's always a reason of why we're not getting paid, but from our standpoint, we did the work, we want to be paid. Just today, 9 teachers received an email saying your bill pay form was filled out incorrectly. It's October 2nd. We did this work in August. We filled out these bill pay forms in August, and we're getting the paperwork back now stating they're filled out incorrectly. The pay is due on Friday. We get paid on Friday. Even if these bill pay forms are filled out correctly by Friday, they need to be submitted by the bill pay period ends, which was last Friday. And we're getting them Wednesday. This hasn't been the only time that bill pay forms were returned to teachers. There was a previous time, I believe it was September.
Andrew, while you're looking for that, do they go straight back to the teacher, or do they go back to the building?
This email said you will be getting a bill pay form returned to you to fill out correctly. I don't know whether they will get the bill pay forms returned to them. I don't know.
The first I heard of this was in late August when I started getting phone calls from staff saying that they weren't getting paid. When we started looking around the office, we found several things. We found that, and Andrew is correct, there have been supervisors who have basically said, go ahead, do this, and we will pay you. However, the problem that we're running into is the business office has no clue unless the supervisor alerts us that they have said this to their staff. We have no way of knowing, one, that it's happening, 2, where the supervisor intends to pay that salary from, and 3, in some cases, the supervisor wasn't available to answer those questions, so it's taken a long time to figure this out. The other thing we found, and Andrew is correct in saying that the forms were not the best in showing what needed to happen. I guess they weren't descriptive enough. So we created new forms after the first time we met to try to make sure that all the pieces of information that needed to be on those forms were there. We also created a form that now, even though there was a form that supervisors did not use, we created a form that now forces the supervisor and the staff person to collaborate and to say, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm willing to do, here's when I'm doing it, it should be in your packets. And here's where I'm going to pay it from. And until that gets filled out and signed, then there's no approval, no formal approval. And I feel bad because, many cases it landed on the shoulders of like the assistant principals who at the end of the summer are trying to figure out who went where was the money supposed to come from. They didn't know any more than we did. In one case, we lost a staff person who handled all the business papers of one of our departments, the curriculum department. So when the forms came into the curriculum department to process, the person just wasn't there. And when a person came in to substitute, it wasn't until weeks later when they finally found the forms, and then it was again the scramble of trying to figure out, who was supposed to be there, what were the hours, where was the money going to come from. And last but not least, there were 2 cases where basically we were promised that monies would be coming from somewhere else. One was a grant that was written through the high school that basically, when we found out that the grant fell through because the state did not fund it, it forced me to go back and rewrite the Race to the Top grant to cover those people who did go for some training and were due some payment in return. So however long it takes to rewrite a 12-piece grant, that's how long it took, and then you need to wait until the grant gets approved. The other part that was apparently promised was a series of trainings that were going to be paid for by the PTO. But the PTO gave a specific amount, about $3,000. The problem was there was no limit as to who could sign up for this training. So when you have just about double the number of people than the money you had, again, and then the supervisor who promised that they would get paid leaves it to the assistant principal to then scramble and find out where the rest of the money is going to come from. So I did what Andrew asked. We fixed the forms, not to everybody's liking, but at least so that we could keep track of who's giving permission, where's the money going to come from before people actually do the work. And I went building by building, in particular to the new administrators in the system, to explain the forms, to explain how they needed to be filled out, to explain how the budget works, what lines could be used, what lines couldn't be used, so that from here on out we can do this right. I have to say, sometimes the supervisors would send the forms back after they got it from us saying it's still not filled right. They send it back to the staff member. They come back to the supervisor who sends them to us, and they're still not filled out right. So I do have about 32 people whose forms came in either corrected or are still not corrected as of now. Out of those, about half of them have been corrected and will be on the next pay period. There's still some that, for example, I'm getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them without hours, so we don't know how many hours they worked. I have one where the hours conflict, so they're saying they were in two different places, but at the same time during the same hours. And they're asking for money twice. So some of these forms just, you know, that the supervisor wouldn't have caught it, that Lucy caught.
Mike, Melissa, then Andrew. Do you have your hand up?
Just my first question, which was more point of information, then I'll have a follow-up, is item number 2 is extra duty pay. And while we did get into a prolonged discussion on the particular forms and having revised some forms, is that what we're going to discuss under 5, or is there other forms?
That is what I wanted to discuss under 5.
Right,
They are related.
What I see at extra 2 is whatever forms existed previously and whatever administrative challenge we may have had, some of those forms must be accurate and funds are due. We may not have the funds based on what I heard, but creating a new form for previous work, I'm opposed to. So that's what I wanted to add, that we have to use the old forms under the old arrangement to decide how we're going to pay the money that's due. I heard some great improvements have been made on the forms. We can get into that at number 5, but I think that the lessons learned can improve going forward the process, but we still have this extra duty past due that I was on the impression we were looking here.
Melissa?
I have a few questions. The very first one, you mentioned that you wrote a grant to fund some training that was already done. So I guess,
It was the MIMSI grant for the AP training.
so my question would be, they had already done the work and then you wrote the grant?
The MIMSI grant was
What-
written,
What was that, is that what happened? Because I have a follow-up to that. Is they did the work and then you wrote the grant?
no.
Okay.
The MIMSI grant was written in advance. The MIMSI grant is basically for AP training, and they were relying on monies from the state that never materialized at the end of June. By then, a couple of our staff members from the middle school had already attended, and basically they were willing to pay in arrears when they got the money. When the rest of the staff in the summer, that were going to go in the summer, wanted to go still, I said, well, we don't know where the money's going to come from. I talked to Cheryl in the office, and basically we took some money from the Westport Education Foundation, who was willing to fund a portion of it, not the whole thing. We had not budgeted for that additional funding because we were thinking the MIMSI grant was going to pay for it. So I went back and rewrote the RTT grant to account for that so people could get paid.
So that, the RTT grant that you wrote, was that before or after they did the
The
training?
grant was already submitted to the state.
The
but I
RTT
told them-
grant.
Right, but I told them to hold off on approving it because I needed to do an amendment. So when I found out that the Westport Education Foundation wasn't going to pay for all of it, that's when I called up and I said, can you hold off on approving the RTT grant? Because I need to go back and figure out which ones, because the Westport Education Foundation was very specific as to which ones they wanted to pay for. So then I had to go back into the RTT grant and figure out where I could take money from.
I'm confused. Melissa?
So, it's okay. So
So,
my thoughts behind that questioning is, regardless of if the grant would have been funded or not, if the work is complete, then they need to get paid for it. So couldn't the business office pay and then transfer that expense after? Because, and maybe you don't even answer that question, but that's what my thoughts are behind it. And Michael indicated about that new form. When they submitted those forms, and then they realized it didn't have the information, we then went back, revised the form, and then gave them a new form to fill out? Is that how the process
no,
works?
in many cases, we just sent the old form back looking for the information we needed. And the biggest piece that was missing in most of the forms was what account. Because the business office, they have numbers. They go, what's the account you want me to take it out of? And those are not our accounts. Those are the building level accounts. So if a principal says, hey, I want you to come to a training, I'm willing to take Whoever wants to come for the training on these 5 days for 5-6 hours and times 30 hours, that's fine. But the building needs to be able to identify it, and nobody seems to know what account it was supposed to come out of.
So the forms went back though to the individual, not to the building supervisor?
No, went to the building supervisor.
So since August, the building supervisors were not able to put the correct account on the forms in order to get them paid? Because that's what the issue is they just couldn't put the account on the form?
A lot of the forms went back to you at the beginning of the year. Not all of them.
She said she got the forms from the business office about a week and a half ago, just repeating.
Andrew, then Michelle.
I have 4 points. Just to address the AP grant, that work was for training. I'm not too sure what it was.
Training and reimbursement for the days, the $100 a day.
It occurred in June. They were just paid on our last paycheck, which was late September. And it took multiple...
Not a paycheck, no, it was a separate check that was paid.
Separate check.
I just got paid, he's right.
And this is one that was funded.
It's the
No,
one
they
that-
found
no,
alternate
grant
funding.
form.
No, that was from the Westport Education Foundation. Whenever we got the check, we deposited, the town has to create an account, and then we pay out of that account.
That's the one that fell through.
The other point is, it is not our responsibility to guess how the district wants a bill pay form filled out correctly. We cannot guess at it. There was no direction of how to fill this out correctly. And for our supervisors to sign it and to return it to us is outrageous. I've suggested, Dr. Colley agreed to numerous suggestions, which is why we have the list on the new bill pay form. One of the other suggestions that I've suggested more than once is to have, if the district wants it filled out a certain way, that they fill it out for us, and we will sign it. But for us to guess how they want it filled out, I can't guess as to somebody else's intentions. If you want it done a certain way so that I get paid a certain way, then do it for me and show me how to do it. Multiple correspondences have said that as soon as it has a proper PO, a proper this, none of that is our issue. We don't have PO numbers. We don't have any of that. The final point that I have for this, in response to what people have said, one of the things that Dr. Colley has said is that the business office or the central admin had no idea that some of these things were happening. One of these things was the assessment clinic that happened at the West. This is an email printed out from Dr. Colley to the parents, stating the assessment clinic will happen between August 12th and August 23rd. They clearly knew about it.
Michelle?
I have a few comments and a couple of questions. First of all, you are absolutely right. You should be paid for your time within a reasonable period. There's nothing worse than doing the work and not getting paid for it and then having to chase down your money. It does appear that some progress has made with a new form. However, a few things. I'm a little concerned about the issue that happened with the PTO, and what are we doing to make sure that in the future, I mean, we love that they help us, but how do we also make sure that when they do support us with funding, that there are the limitations necessary for whether it be the number of people, this many people equals this much funding, and beyond that it becomes the district. So that's one concern that I do have. Another concern is, it seems to me like there may have been a longer lag than is appropriate between when the forms were filled out, when they were received, sent back, returned, all that stuff. What can we do? What are we doing? What do we need to do to fine tune that to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore? Do we do any supervisory training, any training with our supervisors on how these forms are filled out, so that if a supervisor, like you said, you don't know how to fill these forms out, the supervisor should know how to fill these forms out, whoever is doing that, because I see right on it, one of these forms has the spot for account number of funding source. So,
That's the new form.
no, I understand that. So even moving forward, do the supervisors have the authority to identify where that funding source is even coming from? And if they do, how do they make sure, how do we ensure that the supervisors make sure that when these forms are filled out, they are filled out appropriately, and they stop bouncing back, so that we don't have this back and forth ping pong? Because I think that's a large amount of people unnecessarily that haven't been paid, and I think they need to get paid. But I understand the administrative side of it that needs to go through all of its channels as well. But we need to fix it.
Number one, the supervisors could have used even the old form, because the old forms do have, where's the money gonna come from? Those pieces were not filled out. So when the forms hit our office, and we had new supervisors who have never done this before, because it was, we have some brand new supervisors never had to deal with, and did not know what the intent, as you put it, the intent of the prior supervisor of the building was as to where they were going to get the money from. So if that had been filled out, it would have been as simple as sign it on the bottom and send it off.
Yeah, yes and no, and I'm only going, who, when we talk about supervisors, who are we talking about? Okay.
Or
So,
usually it's either the principal, the assistant superintendent, because she does a lot of the training for curriculum, or the special ed director, because she does training for the special ed staff. And so when we created the new form, and particularly this one, you'll see that those are the first three people that have to sign. It doesn't get to the business office until those three people have signed and you have a funding source.
this form is much clearer. This one is not. All it says is account number. That,
Well,
I mean, all I'm
The new
seeing
form
is,
for actual bill pays still has the account number and the PO number.
I know that, but all I'm saying is the new form is actually saying account number of funding source. This is just saying strictly account number. Could be any account number. I get it, but we need to fix this. We need to get these people paid. And as a side note, I'm so glad you guys got that training, by the way, the AP training. And it's worth it, even if it comes out of our pockets, anyway.
For the most part, it hasn't been an issue in the buildings where the administrator has had experience doing this before.
So you
Thanks for
have
that.
15
All right.
people, 15 people as of the end of this week that will be unpaid, roughly. Well, he said 32, but half of them are in the next block of payment,
Right.
I thought you said?
Yes, because they were being corrected. There was
When's the next pay period? What day do you guys get?
Our next paycheck
This
is
Friday?
this Friday. Our next pay period
So
ending is next Friday.
that half is due to get paid on this Friday?
There's, no.
The next Friday? Will the next,
There's 19 forms that have, out of the 32 that have been done.
If there's anything that is quote-unquote wrong or filled out or filled out wrong, at this present moment, it will not be paid on Friday because it needed to be in by the previous Friday. And again, I keep reiterating, none of that is our fault. 3 points. Yes, there has been progress. And yes, Dr. Colley has taken some of our suggestions for the bill pay form. I still wish he would still take more and have the district fill out the bill pay forms how they want them filled out, because we will sign them. But twice forms were returned when it was too late to get anybody paid. One time it happened on 9/13. The 13th, bill pay forms were returned that day. This was after a meeting with Dr. Colley and corresponding via email. That Friday was the end of the pay period. How can we realistically expect that bill pay forms are going to get to central office and into payroll in order to pay them the following Friday. So we wait until the last day of the pay period to get people paid. Clearly, they're not going to be paid for another 2 weeks. Another 3 weeks, because, I'm sorry, just one
No,
more
I'm
point.
sorry, go ahead.
This is not a new problem. It may be worse this year, but in previous years that I've worked here, bill pay forms, you get it stacked on payroll's desk. And when you call over, we're getting to them as quick as we can. Well, quick as we can is not following Mass General Law. The third and final point that I have in response is that it is not PTO money that it's paying for. It was a grant that was written by the teachers through Bay Coast Bank, in which we wrote a grant for this assessment clinic. And the Bay Coast put the money into PTO's account. It's more of a holding tank, so it's not a PTO blame kind of thing.
And that wasn't my
And I
intention.
just wanted to
No.
clarify that.
That was not my intention in any way, shape,
That
or
wasn't
form.
the issue.
Mike's got a
I
point
just
of information.
want clarification. Is it PTO or the Educational Foundation?
Well, we
They're
mentioned
two
both, Mike.
separate grants.
Okay, so they're both.
We mentioned
Yeah.
two.
Dr. Colley, is it possible to, you have on here that in order for them to get approval, it has to be approved 3 weeks in advance by the superintendent, right on the top. I would wonder if we can do the reverse as well. I like the dating on the new form, so that you can follow the track of it took this long to get to this person, this long to get to this person, and so on and so forth. But is there a way to also add into the form that once received by the business office, blah, 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 the employee will be paid within 7 days, so that we can also hold everybody accountable on both sides, holding the teachers accountable or the supervisors accountable, whoever, for getting their approvals on the first point, but also holding the business office accountable on the flip side to make sure that they also return their work. And I know they're busy, but they need to return these on a timely fashion as well, so that the people can get paid appropriately. So that would be something that I would like to see added to the form, so that we can, I don't see it on the new form.
How realistic would a 3-week
This is
advance
for,
notice,
this is-
professional development?
that's for, that's for the advanced part. I'm saying on the flip side, once the business office receives the form.
No, I get that, but on their side, I mean, does it ever happen where something comes up and we sign people up a week in advance?
Just this past week, there was we're piloting a reading program at the elementary school, and there's a journeys training. I don't have the exact dates, but I met with him and he presented this form, and I voiced concerns about this form, about the 3 weeks being somewhat unrealistic. There was a journeys training that was put out to the teachers in email saying, we'll pay you if you attend. And I've been told that anything that involves pay has to be filled out through this form. That journeys training involves pay. We received maybe 1 week's notice, maybe a week and a half. I don't have the exact dates, but it was definitely less than 3 weeks. There's no way that we can get this through. And I met with Dr. Colley yesterday. He said that this can happen as little as 3 days. I put in, using this form, to attend a training for a dyslexia conference. It took 11 days just to get back to me. And this was a simple, we receive $100 every year to attend a PD training. We should already know which account this is coming out of. It took 11 days to get back to me. Sometimes these conferences don't get sent to us 4 weeks in advance. Sometimes they come to our email and saying, hey, in 2 weeks there's going to be a dyslexia conference. Well, I have a student with dyslexia this year. I want to attend this conference. So if I don't get it in 3 weeks, I can't go to that. I'm entitled to my $100 PD funds. It took 11 days. And then I have to make sure, then I have to take the chance that maybe that conference is full, so now I can't go to that one.
Is that the new form?
Yes.
Can I see that?
So the old form didn't have a
Mike, why don't I fill that out?
Yeah, do you mind?
the old form didn't have that 3-week advance notice.
Didn't have any.
I also think that form is, we're covering two things, which is just fine with me because they are connected. I also think that this form is unrealistic and confusing to teachers, and I don't think teachers know that they need to fill this out for anything that involves money, including that journeys training. It has on here for field trips. I recently filled this out for a field trip. I had no idea whether I need to fill this out for a field trip or not, because it has such things as travel mileage and other, and name of workshop. We're not going to a workshop, we're going on a field trip.
And I totally agree, as we're talking about the forms, I have some firsthand experience with this particular form. I was denied payment for mileage and attending annual conferences because I didn't fill the form out appropriately. Worth noting that the old form was updated on September 2012. It's not even a year old, so we didn't fix it last year. We're now spending a half an hour talking about administrative forms and process and procedure. I'd like to call a vote, if we could, to pay any past dues of professional development and go forward with this. We have an internal administrative situation where the forms are very confusing. As I said, firsthand, I've experienced the confusion, and there may be an online submittal that we could come up with. There's solutions there. I don't think we're going to find the solutions at this desk. We have some pay that's due. I think we should take, it's before us as a school committee. We've got a report that there's 19 people that are expecting pay that filled out forms. Can't we make a motion to, would the chairman entertain a motion to pay all past due professional development?
I would hold off. Let me hold off.
Okay.
You would. I'd ask you to hold off. Let me just say something. Unless if I may. Before I lose my train of thought. No one's denying that the work's been done. Not administration. I mean, the teachers, the staff came in, they did X, Y, and Z. They signed up, they did it. If the form doesn't have the account number on it, I mean, the teacher, the staff member fills out the date, the time, they sign it, they turn it in. Somebody doesn't put an account number, or maybe they don't even know the account number. But the fact of the matter is, the person did the work. So, I don't know where, where's the money coming from? It's coming from where it's supposed to have come from 3 months ago. As far as the PTOs or the Education Foundation and any confusion there, my God, we have people that want to give us money, and we're sitting here complaining about it. We should be at their door, mowing their lawns for them or something. I mean, if people want to help us, we don't need to make it harder for them. And again, and then Mike just touched on it. Something I wanted to say was, okay, maybe they're confusing. The first time we've heard this issue, so maybe we need to, maybe if we get into doing these electronically, the teachers can fill them out in the classroom, in the school. They can push a button, it goes right to someone's computer somewhere. No more 11 days. I mean, I don't know. It just, the work was done. It was obviously talked about. It was approved. It was, I mean, are people just signing up for conferences and professional development on their own without asking permission? I mean, is that what we're talking? I don't think that's what we're talking about here. Melissa?
Can I,
Two questions. What is the approximate dollar value of the people, like total aggregate?
The
what we're
outstanding
talking about?
balance?
I mean,
$3,200.
so
$32 million?
$3,200.
$3,200.
So
Oh, I thought it was the other
for
thing.
$3,200 not to be paid, I don't understand why it couldn't have been paid out of an account and then the expense transferred after, because they've been paid. I mean, they've done the work. They need to be paid. I mean, I think there shouldn't be, if the form was filled out if there's a question about if the dates are the same, or, you know, it looks like something's wrong, like you mentioned about how someone did something and it looks like they have the same dates, that's different, that's different. But if it's because there's,
2,100.
excuse me?
2,100.
Okay. So, you know, if there's a question about that, that's different, because you don't know what's going on with the form. But for something that isn't necessarily where the teacher has to fill out the information, I don't understand why for $3,200, I mean, we're not talking about $500,000 here, why that can't be paid and then figured out, or why, I don't know why it would take this long, but.
Well, if I may, the ones that were returned is because there were no hours written on it, or there was no administration signature on them. And if you don't have the hours, you can't calculate how much time the person spent, so you don't know what to multiply 30 by. And if there's no administrative signature, there is no check and balance, because just because somebody says they did it, you would expect the supervisor to know that they did it. And I think part of it is this issue that the supervisor who approved and should have followed the form was no longer available. So the supervisor who took over afterwards, they had no idea. Many of them had no idea whether the people did in fact do the work.
All right, we're not going to talk about individuals.
But wait a minute,
Yeah, I had my
he's
hand
doc-
up.
Melissa,
doc-
then
I did have my
Michelle.
hand up.
Dr. Colley, you're saying that, because before it was my understanding that the issue with these forms, or a majority of these issues, were that there was no account number, but now you're saying, but that's not the case. There actually are specific things like dates or signatures weren't, so there are multiple issues with these forms, not just there's an account number missing.
The big issue originally that came to my attention was the account numbers.
Michelle,
Thank
go
you.
ahead, and then.
I actually, on the little things, and I don't mean little things, but I mean the account numbers, things that can be taken care of on the administrative side, I think those should have been paid out. The other stuff regarding signatures missing, hours missing, et cetera, that needs to be fixed. They need to make sure those forms are filled out appropriately. I would still like to have, at some point, you revisit the 3 weeks, somehow putting in something in there so that in the event of a case like this one where they don't have that 3 weeks, we're not turning them away and not allowing them to get their forms in, because the training might be important, it might be fabulous, we don't want them to miss the boat. But I'd also like to, and especially after taking a look at those dates there, 6 days between the principal signature and the administrative side signature is too long. I took a look, it's not a weekend, and the business office didn't even put the date. They need to date it. When that's part of the checks and balances, there's no date on that. So, and you did have your signature on it. So,
Does it have a date on it though?
yours does, business office does not. So we need to make sure those things get done, and I think that's excessive. So I think we need to put a window on the administrative side as well to make sure that these things are getting done in a timely fashion so that their paychecks are going out. I mean, if the law is saying we have 7 days to pay them, obviously we can't take 11 days from start to finish, from when they sign it to when you sign it. And we also need to make sure that all that is done. That's why it's there. So,
That's why I always dated. I just wanted to see.
so, you know, I'd like you to look into seeing what is appropriate on administrative side. I don't think that's unfair to ask. If we're asking that they handle their paperwork in an appropriate time frame, then I think that it should be done on the other end as well, and that way they can get paid.
I don't disagree.
Hi, Melissa Avila, teacher at the West.
I don't know if that's on.
Oh, okay.
There's no speaker,
Okay.
so it's going right out, yeah.
Teacher at the West, I have a couple of comments that I've been.
Still talking to the mic, it's just, there's no speaker in here, but it's on.
A few things. Number one, we did our work 6 weeks ago that we have not been paid for. I attended 3 trainings this summer, totaling $720. I have none of that money. One of the trainings was returned to me. It had the hours, it had 4 hours a day at $30 an hour, and it said it was the wrong form. That was the form that was physically handed to me and put in my mailbox and said, please fill this out. So if that's in my mailbox and it says, fill this out, and you're telling me 5 weeks later that it's filled out incorrectly, I'm not seeing how that's my problem. Number two, I have not received a form back for the language-based training. If it was filled out incorrectly, I should have received it back. I did not, and I have not been paid for it. Many of us live paycheck to paycheck because we spend the majority of our money in our own classrooms supplying stuff for students that don't have it. So to tell me that I have to wait 6 weeks to get paid for something I did above and beyond so that my family could have additional money is not okay. And we have the law right there saying 7 days. It's been 6 weeks. I don't want to talk about forms in the future and this is how we can make it better. We need to solve this right now. There's many more people than in this room. So if you owe me $720, the outstanding balance is not $3,200. It's a lot more than that.
In response to the forms, many times it's at the district's request that a teacher attends a training. I can give the example of the MCAS Alt, which Dr. Colley showed me yesterday, that these teachers may not go, even though the district is requesting it, because this form is filled out incorrectly. I don't remember at the top of my head.
No, it wasn't completed.
It wasn't completed. It's at the district's request. The portrayal of these incorrect bill pay forms, and I build off of what Melissa said, is completely inaccurate. I have at least 10 hours due me. None of my forms have ever been returned to me to say that they are incorrect. None of my forms. So the portrayal was that the hours weren't down, or this wasn't down, or we don't know how many hours this person worked. Not my forms. The signatures that are being obtained for these things were done by the people that are here. All my 16 hours, and included the assessment clinic, was done by an administrator that is still here. So to put blame on somebody else that's no longer here is inaccurate.
So where are the forms for these people? Are they still waiting in the office? They haven't received them? Because they need to get paid. I mean, I think they should have a check cut tomorrow. I mean, if their information is there, I think it's outrageous that they're not getting paid.
What I can tell you is the 19 that are all set, those forms have been processed. They're in the system. Just, we don't cut the checks. The information goes to Equifax or whoever it is that does the checking, and they cut the checks.
I'm sorry, what do you mean we don't cut the checks?
We don't have a checkbook in the
It's
office.
not done in the business office.
The business office simply goes into the system, puts in the account number,
Okay, right.
pushes a button, goes off to a company that then cuts the checks, prints them out, cuts them, sends them back, and we distribute them. That's why there is some amount of time that you have to have in order to do that.
Is that payroll or all payments? That's
Payroll.
payroll.
And all payments. We don't handle.
Same company.
But we pay vendors through a different checkbook, correct? We have a checkbook at the town hall that we pay vendors from, correct?
Those go.
That's
to the-
available to take care of this problem right now that's been brought before the school committee, and we have a decision to make.
Donna Edwards, I'm a teacher at West. I was under the impression that I would be paid Friday for the assessment clinic that I did in August. Just today, at 5 o'clock, I got an email saying that my forms are incorrect and that they are being sent back to me for me to complete again. So if you want to know where the forms are, they're somewhere, but I haven't seen it yet. I submitted those forms in August, right after I did the assessment at the end of the week. And I'm just now finding out that they were done improperly. So I guess I'm not getting paid for that Friday. It'll be another, 2 weeks? 2.5 weeks? So we're pushing 2 months. 8 weeks.
We should collect interest on the money that the school's been collecting interest on. We should be collecting interest.
Anybody else? You want to make that motion?
So can I make a motion
We
to?
don't have an action agenda.
You don't need
This
it?
is a posted,
Don't need one.
We don't need one.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to pay the teachers who are currently owed their money as soon as possible, the next check cut, next check run.
Next check will be 2 weeks from Friday.
And there's no way to get it into this,
I don't have a mechanism to do it. You can ask the town if they want to cut it out of their checkbook. I don't know what they'll say.
so can I make a motion for the next check run, but have Dr. Colley see if the town can, will be able to do checks sooner than that?
When are the next warrants?
Tony,
Wednesday.
the town representative is available.
Tony, I would just suggest that you had a payroll system. I don't even know who cuts the checks out of that. And then you've got a 1099 supplier system. As much as we would like to try to use one system to solve the problem, you have to pay your payroll through your payroll. Now, I would just call them and say, our normal deadline is such and such. Can I cut 13 checks tomorrow if I give you the information? That's what I would do.
And that was kind of the...
So we got a motion. We get a second?
Second.
Discussion.
In lieu of the motion and the discussion, I would like to add is this paid as out of a payroll?
Yes.
With deductions of taxes, or is it paid as a reimbursement?
As a payroll.
Okay, so this is payroll and it's with, that's, was not clear.
Well, I think Mr.
So if mileage was on their forms, it would be paid as payroll? And they would have taxes withheld based on it being a payroll, even though it's mileage. We'll
No
fix it.
taxes that would help in reimbursed expenses. It may come through on your payroll, but you don't, that's not a taxable.
Okay.
I know that, that's why I was asking.
Yeah, but that's not the issue.
And I think in the past, we have paid reimbursable expenses through our vendor system, our vendor check system. I just saw that as an option, but I think the suggestion that we have before us, if that's agreeable, which,
Basically, Melissa, to get these people paid as soon as possible. By
Yes, that's the next
if
check
not
run.
sooner.
Yeah, if not sooner.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, who seconded that?
Michael?
Michael
I'm
did.
sorry. And is all in favor?
Mm-hmm.
Can I add one
Sure.
final thing to that? I sent an email to Dr. Colley stating that it is the Federation's position that if people are not paid by this Friday, which I believe is the 4th, I don't have my calendar in front of me.
2 days from now.
2 days from now, all outstanding money that has been performed, we had no choice but to explore legal action. That's where we're coming from.
That's your
So.
yeah.
that's new information.
Okay, next.
Motion to reconsider the previous vote?
Can't make things happen any quicker.
I'll explain my motion if I could
So
get
I'll
a
second
second.
it.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I made that motion to reconsider based on the new information that was provided regarding facing potential legal action. Certainly, I would welcome a revision to that position from the union, that because we're looking to make this happen as soon as possible. Anticipation is money is not going to be in your hands on Friday. I would vote differently based on new information provided. So thank you for providing that. Unless there's a revision to that,
Well, I don't even know if that would even be possible, even if we wanted to do it, I don't know.
to what, revise the motion?
No, pay them by Friday?
Well, that's what
On
I'm saying. If
Friday.
we-
I don't even know. I
think
don't even know if that's possible,
I think we can
Andrew, is what I'm
I
saying.
think we can certainly take into consideration if it is going to be paid, the money that's not being paid this Friday, if it's being paid before 2 weeks from now, I think we can certainly
You know, I mean,
reconsider.
all I would say to that is, I guess there's only so much that we can't, maybe we can speed up things here, but I don't know what we could do as far as the payroll I don't know, I'm just Just thinking out loud.
And are there?
We've already waited now it'll be 9 weeks. You deserve, by law, 7 days. I don't think anyone in the union is gonna say, let's rethink this. I'm sorry. My members, there's only a few members here, but how can you say it's justifiable that you worked and I'm not gonna pay you until 9 weeks after you worked? If you worked a minimum wage job and got a weekly check.
I don't think we're saying that.
But that's what it seems like. It's like from this point forward, we have to figure this out right here, right now. We worked June, July, and August. We don't have our money. What are we going to do about it? Telling me in good faith it's probably going to be done by the next pay period doesn't sit well with me.
Well, we
Because
just had a
working here
motion.
for 14 years, many things have been promised
Okay.
and not many things take place. So this needs to stop right now. It has to stop.
I mean, we made a motion
There's a
and
motion on the floor, right,
you want to reconsider.
to reconsider the previous vote.
Is that a second, Liz?
I did second it.
All in favor?
And the discussion
Can I
is,
just,
because we cannot perform based on information that wasn't provided before we had the vote. The superintendent was aware of this correspondence that we've had legal threat, and we weren't told that before we took a vote. So thank you for sharing that. If this is a legal issue, then certainly I would have voted differently unless they can rescind that. We have the official representation from WFT here. If he's willing to amend his correspondence of a deadline, I think the previous vote established this to move quickly. I don't.
That was something you sent to Dr. Colley?
Yes. I have a copy of it if you need it.
I wasn't aware that existed, so that's why I.
Neither was I, Mike. But I don't know what, we don't have, it's not like we have a cash drawer. Now with $32 million.
I'm not suggesting we could meet the deadline, that's why I'm concerned that that still exists, because we're not gonna meet that deadline.
Excuse me for a second. And I'm not a lawyer, so maybe lawyers can answer this. But it's my understanding that anyone who is not paid can call the Attorney General's office and file a complaint for non-payment of wages. So it doesn't have to be a lawsuit from WFT. Anyone, they may not even be in this room tonight.
It's online.
Tomorrow could pick up the phone
There's a form.
and file a complaint.
Absolutely.
You're right, yes.
And I think people have waited a long time.
I corresponded on the last Wednesday, September 25th.
So if you change the date on that and hand it to Dr. Colley, then the vote stands and you get paid in time. We can't do it by Friday. I'm just, instead of calling anyone else, you called us and we're here. And I think we've got a responsible vote that's already been put forward, promising payment by, I believe the motion.
I don't know what mechanism we have, if any, to, I don't know, I'm not, it's not my,
So, Dr. Colley, how do you presume that we rectify this matter if we have teachers who aren't getting paid and they've done the work? So how do we rectify this situation? Do you have any suggestions?
The only suggestion that I have is that principals, assistant superintendent, director of special ed have their information in hand before they say to anybody, go ahead and do something, then you're going to get paid for it. In
But
terms
that's
of
not
going
the
backwards,
question.
I don't have the information that I need in order to pay. Because if I don't have the information and it didn't get brought through the channels, which is either a principal, the assistant superintendent, or the director of special ed, I would have no way to tell a secretary that sits in the office, pay it out of here. Or here's how much to pay to this person.
But at September 25th, you knew that the Federation would potentially take legal action if they weren't paid by this Friday.
And I
Wouldn't-
made an appointment with Andrew, and I said, I will explain to you where we are in the process and why it's taking so long. And we met yesterday.
If I can just ask.
He corresponded-
one
he
que- If I can
responded to
just,
my email.
one question, Andrew. You've got a date on the letter of potential pending lawsuit. And the drop dead date on that is this Friday, correct?
Correct.
Are you willing to change that to within 2 weeks, just so we can start this process? It may be earlier, but I think the vote because it's resolved within as soon as possible. It didn't have a date in it. And
I'm not ready to make that decision
okay.
by myself right now, for two reasons. Because I don't want to, I represent a membership, and I am the spokesperson for that membership, but I don't make executive decisions for my membership. That's number one. And number two, there have been lots of promises made. And I understand that, promises were made by different people, and you're making a different promise. But I'm still hearing the superintendent say, as soon as they're filled out correctly, he can process them.
That's not what the vote was.
It's more than a promise, I mean, but I hear you. Michelle?
I have, and I guess, I don't even know if this would be directed at you. I think what I'm hearing Dr. Colley say is the particular forms, because as far as I'm concerned, the only ones that would be an issue are the ones that have hours not listed on there. And for example, say you worked 10 hours and you filled out your form and you didn't put your 10, didn't put days, dates, or anything like that. I see how they don't know how much to pay because those haven't done. How many forms of those are we talking about?
But they don't have a supervisor's signature on
I'm
them.
talking about the ones that specifically have hours on them. If there's hours missing or,
Why haven't those been returned to us before?
well, and that's what I was asking
Well, I guess we know what
before.
everybody's gonna be doing tomorrow. They're gonna take care of all that tomorrow. That's what they're gonna do, I would hope.
8 of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 9.
8 are missing hours.
But we know where these
How many,
people are. right?
how many are missing supervisory signatures? What are the others?
Hours or double billing,
You said 8 were missing hours.
or double billing.
Okay.
Basically a problem with the hours.
I agree with you, and I sympathize with what you're saying, but at the same time, we have to look at moving forward, which is why we really need to, 11 days is too long. They shouldn't be finding out 2-3 weeks down the line that there was an error on their form.
This isn't, I mean, it's beyond two.
No, I'm just saying.
But we're talking about 6 to 8
I get it,
weeks
I get it. No, I understand
Take
that.
the motion.
I think you should be paid tomorrow.
Please take
I
the
do.
first motion, 'cause we've got
If we had a mechanism to do that. But moving forward also, we need to put a time limit on how long these papers are coming, how long it's taking these papers to come back.
Basically make them.
And at the same time, we really need to work to rectify this situation
Okay.
so that we know
Just
how
do it
much
yourself.
these teachers have put in the hours, get them paid very next billing period if everything is lined up and they did do the work and they did the hours and they're not double billing. We need to fix this.
And I think based on Michelle's overview of the situation, I'll rescind my motion if you'll rescind the second, and the vote will stand.
Rescind. Of those 8 or 9 people, are they in one school, multiple schools? And is this something that can you just,
I believe this is all elementary school.
so then that's one trip to the elementary school to meet and get the account, or, because, I mean, it doesn't take that long to meet with people to get those things situated. I mean, now that we know there's 8 people, I mean, that's not that many people.
Okay. Let's move on.
Can I skip over something and then come
Sure,
back?
sure.
I'd like to address FMLA next. FMLA law allows for a
Andrew, for people who might not know what FMLA is, what's
Family
FMLA?
Medical Leave Act. It's a federal act by from the federal government. It stipulates that an employee can take up to 60 days to care for themselves or a immediate family member, and that immediate family member, I believe, is defined in the FMLA law. They can take FMLA leave, and an employee can elect to use accrued paid vacation leave, paid sick, or paid leave for some or all of FMLA law. The law does also say, and an employee must follow the employer's normal leave rules in order to substitute paid leave. The superintendent and I have met, I think at least twice, involving this issue because there are two, and I'll be careful not to use names, there are two teachers within our membership. Some, excuse me. There are some teachers within our membership who have requested to use FMLA leave and are being denied the ability to use their accrued paid sick leave while they are not currently sick, but they are caring for an immediate family member. And our issue is, well, the superintendent is technically and legally within his right to not allow these employees to use their paid sick time. It goes against the spirit of our contract, and I think it goes against the spirit of the law. These employees have accrued their sick leave time. They should be allowed to use it. The federal law permits them to use it. And we're finding a way to not pay them while they care for an immediate family member who's having a serious illness. And I'm here asking, I hope the school committee supersedes the superintendent and allows these employees to be paid using their sick time that they have earned over the years.
Okay. Has the person filed a grievance?
No.
That's how you get to us. We can't overrule decisions on a grievance issue if you don't file the grievance.
There's nothing to specifically grieve because he's not violating the contract. We believe that he's legally within his right of federal law.
Okay, so you just don't like the decision he made?
Not at all. I don't think it follows the spirit of federal law, and I don't think it follows the spirit of our contract.
Well, but if it doesn't follow the spirit of your contract, then it's a contractual issue.
Yes, and this isn't, but a grievance is not the only mechanism to get to the school committee, which is why I'm here tonight, because there's another mechanism in our contract that allows me to get to the school committee.
Not on contractual issues. But you're saying this isn't contractual, this is a policy he's decided to implement.
Yes, and it has been set as a precedent, and I know precedent can be somewhat of a gray area, by a different superintendent that allowed previous employees to use paid sick leave to care, while they use FMLA, to care for a loved one.
And just so I'm clear, we're talking about someone who is put in for FMLA,
Yeah,
60 days.
and they've been approved for FMLA.
They've been approved and have 45 days on the books, sick time or whatever.
245.
However many.
Yep.
And want to basically use that sick time or whatever during those 60 days. And we're saying, no, you only have your 15 sick days, or what?
The superintendent is allowing them to take 10 sick leave days under the clause in our contract, which is a family medical illness, I believe it's called, which allows you to care for a loved one while using your sick leave days. But he is cutting it off at 10 and saying after that point, we will protect your job, but we will not pay you.
So contractually, you mentioned the agreements. In our contract, we have In our contract, we have the ability to take a family medical leave for up to 5 days for one incident. That is being allowed, in fact, it was extended to 10 days. So that is being paid. But after that, family medical leave, the federal law kicks in. And that is what is not being, the people are not being allowed to use their sick time while they're on the family medical leave,
So you're
which is
asking,
the federal law.
you're asking us to change the contract?
Through the chair.
No,
No.
because he's following that contract. The in our contract, we
Yeah, I'm
have the
seeing it.
ability to use up to 5 days for any one incident. Okay, and at the superintendent's discretion, it can be extended, which he did do that to 10 days. So
You
they
can
are
also
using
extend it
that.
further.
Right.
And our family leave says you can use not family leave, our sick leave says that you can use it for sick leave, and you can also use it for family emergencies.
Okay, before we go too far, Melissa, then Michael.
So I would like to first say thank you for bringing it to our attention versus going to a grievance and having to pay lawyers. I want to say thank you for bringing it to us. And I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it again correctly. For the contract, you're up to 10 days where you can take family.
Melissa, it is in there if you want to actually read it.
I know, I just want to say it, that per the contract, you're able to take 10 days for family medical.
5 days.
5 days. The superintendent has allowed 10 days, and then family medical leave kicks in, and you're able to take that, and what you're saying is you're not able to use your accrued time. Why is that?
FMLA requires employers to protect the job of somebody who has either an illness themselves or somebody in the family has an illness that will require the person to be out, either caring for somebody or be out themselves for up to 60 days. Does not require the employer to protect the job further than that. Within that same law, they basically refer back to whatever your business practices are in the district or your contractual obligations to allow substitution of unpaid leave for paid leave. Knowing that when people get into problems, whether themselves or family members that are, in particular family members, that are difficult to deal with on any given day, I've extended the 5 days to 10 days so that people would have enough time to arrange either for hospice care, for care by family members, for arranging for nurses to come to the home, or for having the person be able to put into a hospital or a long-term care facility. The concern that I have here is, and Andrew's correct, because I've suggested, you can change the contract. My concern is that there is a cost associated with this. And by doing the additional 5 days, I've already created for the school committee and the district a precedence. And the precedence is that people could claim that in the past I have allowed an extra 5 days. And if somebody else has the similar situation, they can claim, you've done it for others, you should do it for me, so that it's equal treatment. If you extend the amount of time, okay, or if I were to extend it, I'm basically changing the contract without going through the negotiation process.
See, I don't see it as a contractual thing. My understanding of the Family Medical Leave Act is it gives you that time to take, and then if they have accrued time, then they would take their accrued time. And that's how I've seen it done in situations. So I'm going to go back and look at the FMLA, because I thought that they were able to do that, and I don't understand why they would accrue time if they're unable to utilize it.
If you take a look at Part F of the special rule for school employees, read that first, and that would explain that no, there's no requirement for the employee or for the employer to provide paid sick leave. again, you can verify it with the lawyer.
How does an employee use accrued sick time?
They can use it for themselves, or they, by contract, have 5 additional days to care for family members in any one instance.
But just on a regular, let's not talk about FMLA. A teacher is out for 15 or it's 15 sick days 1 year, that has 20 more on the books.
Yeah.
They can take those additional 20 days if they have them on the books and get paid.
Unless it's a condition that that you would know or foresee that takes you away from work for an inordinate period of time. In our contract, there's also time limits as to how long you can be out without providing a note, or when the superintendent or the business office can ask for a doctor's note. If the doctor's note indicates, or you have, for whatever reason, because somebody tells you, hey, so-and-so is out because they were in a car accident, they can't even write a note, they're going to be out for a long, long time, basically, the school is allowed to put them on FMLA, waiting for the papers from the doctors to come and, the papers are not for the weak of heart. They're usually designed
What's to
for...
stop an employee from not filing for FMLA, and just use up 60 of their accrued sick days? What stops them from doing that?
There's nothing to stop them from trying to do that, but the law allows the school committee to declare somebody on leave if you have reasonable suspicion that this is an FMLA case. And in many cases, we have found out after weeks into the time the person has not been at work, and we have retroactively put them on FMLA leave, knowing that it's the same condition that basically they didn't tell us about, but it's been there all
I won't
along.
get too specific.
Hi, I'm Melissa Parker. I'm the building rep at Macomber School, and one of the people who's in this predicament works in my building, and she couldn't be here tonight, so she asked me to speak on her behalf. One of the most frustrating pieces of this puzzle for her in dealing with taking care of her child is that she was given a paper from Dr. Colley that states that she would be able to use her sick days. Please note that you are eligible to use your sick days. Your Family Medical Leave Act paperwork was received on August 20th and became effective on August 27th. FMLA is valid for 1 year from the effective date. Please note you are eligible to use your sick days. As of today, you have 54.5 sick days remaining. Thank you and best wishes. And then, a month later, September 20th, 2013, that was all retracted. And so she based all of her medical plans and care for her child on that letter that she received on August 20th. And now she is left in this complete lurch about what to do and how to proceed. And the stress of this situation has stretched her so far that she is near her breaking point. Would you like to see this paperwork?
Yes, I actually would. Well, if it's got people's names on it, we can't show. No, don't worry about it. So did we send that email? Michael's next.
Did you have a question?
Go ahead. Just after you, Dr.
There was another piece of paper and another meeting with that staff member where, from that meeting, I believe, on our side, that we had agreed to reduce her number of days working. When I found out that that was not the case, that she did not believe that we had an agreement, that's when the second letter was written.
The first comment I was going to make, just for clarification, in my understanding, is we are talking about two issues here. We're talking about the Family Medical Leave Act, and we're talking about the sick leave policies of the Westport schools. It appears that we're in adherence with the Family Medical Leave Act at the federal level. So the core question is, what is our policy on allowing use of sick time, accrued sick time, to care for family illnesses? Apparently, there's been a decision from 5 to 10 days, which sets precedent. Okay, so I think we're all in agreement on that. And Originally, I was going to just simply make a comment that anything beyond that, I totally agree that it belongs in a different forum than at a school committee meeting. However, in light of the previous speaker's comments and what's been submitted, if we've made a commitment, which was read, on behalf of the school committee, that commitment had been made and then retracted. Let me just say that I'm very concerned, and I don't believe that it's appropriate to make a decision which is it's a major life-changing decision that you're going to extend someone use of their sick leave bank to care for an ill person in the family, and then to retract it. I haven't read the letter, I haven't compared the two, but it sounds problematic. It to me it is concerning, not whether or not we're following the federal family sick leave, FMLA, but what is our precedent for use of sick leave bank to care for family members? And I think that letter sets precedent that you can use it all, and I think that letter stands, and I think it would prove to stand, and I think we as a school committee should reassign the decision-making on all further sick leave requests to the assistant superintendent.
Go first.
You were talking about setting a precedent, and Andrew spoke about that when he first brought up the topic, that sick days were granted for FMLA in the past for members in this district. So that is the precedent that we're talking about, and it has already been done.
Thank you.
Michelle,
Thank
then
you.
Melissa.
Dr. Colley, I have a question, and along with Michael's line, until you read that particular one, which we haven't seen, I mean, it does state in the contract language the 5 days out of the 15 school days of absence. So this part is contractual. So I guess that leads to my question, why we sent a letter saying she could use the 54.5 days?
There was
Because
also,
I'm not clear on that.
there was also a discussion with that staff member regarding reducing the number of days that she would work, therefore the number of days that she would need to take on any one given day or week.
Say that, explain that, say that
So she
again.
was
I
going to
don't
continue
follow
working
that.
part-time?
Intermittently, if I may.
Part-time.
She never agreed to be reduced to part-time.
She never
said
agreed to
she was
be
gonna
reduced.
working intermittently.
In fact, the FMLA paperwork from the U.S. Department of Labor that she filled out says specifically estimated leave 2 to 3 days per week as needed, because it's a situation where if his blood counts are okay, she can work. If not, then she needs to be with her child. So that's where the intermittently comes into play. And she definitely did have this conversation with Dr. Colley, and they talked about how there was confusion, but her intention was never to be on a reduced part-time schedule, just to be considered intermittent, because FMLA allows for the use of intermittent leave.
How, I am as well. I don't understand how
There's another piece of
intermittent,
paper that they don't have.
no, even beyond that, though, I'm confused as to how the intermittent piece comes into play with this even.
Because
I think I can
60
answer that.
The 60
Hold on.
days.
I can answer it quickly, if you're asking anyone, or if you're asking the superintendent.
Let him try to
Okay.
answer.
FMLA allows you to not have to take the 60 days consecutively. Could be a condition that requires you to go to the doctors on a regular basis, like every Friday.
Mhm.
And that's where the 60 days can extend beyond just the 12 weeks. So you could
Okay.
have, within a year's time, up to 60 days that you can take of protected leave time, and they don't have to be on the same date. They don't have
Right.
to be, it can be whenever.
Okay.
And what does that have to do with her suddenly being
54 days.
part-time or whatever, or
Right,
reduced hours?
why would that
Because
trigger,
we had the discussion of reducing her to a very short schedule. And partly at her request, written down on a piece of paper that is in the office. I didn't know we were gonna get into specifics.
So,
Melissa?
I was gonna try to
Specif-
answer.
Specifically, you mentioned that
Sometimes.
subpart F indicated where we didn't have to pay the employees during FMLA. Can you tell me specifically where it says that?
I'm gonna have to find it.
So does it say we don't have to, or it's up to our option, or?
Well,
Really,
And if
I
an
have one
employee,
other
and
thing
if
after that.
FMLA allows an employee to take it part-time, like you said, basically, you know, every Friday I have to be at the doctor or something. And why would an employee agree to change their working hours? Michael?
Just to address the idea of going from full-time to part-time, it I would think would be problematic to go that route for an employee based on the then be giving up their accrual rate for benefits, to be giving certain days off that full-time employees get. Again, I'm very concerned with the reversal and that is reflected in the second correspondence. But I'm also very uncomfortable discussing Family
Yeah, we're getting a
Medical
little-
Leave
we're getting a
Act
little bit
and
too
contract
narrow,
law.
yeah.
But in general, the question on the what, I think your question was about going to part-time.
Not so much that, I don't understand how how that would even change the 15 to the 54. I think it should still be what is said in here. That's my confusion. That doesn't even seem like what this is. That's where my confusion is, which is the contract piece that I was looking at.
And
Page
Yeah.
3, it's not that one, it's on the blue, it's the blue one. It's under that
part-time
one.
employees don't qualify for FMLA,
Third
right?
page, the third page, Mike.
She did not, well, number one, I have 2 points. Number one, she did not agree to FMLA. Excuse me, she did not agree to be a part-time employee. Hypothetically, if she did agree to being a part-time employee, page 21 of our contract says, said appointment shall be for such salary and upon such terms and conditions as the superintendent, federation, and the teacher involved may agree. I never agreed to anything.
That's why we didn't go forward with it.
So she could not have been made to a part-time employee.
I'd like to make a motion to pay individuals their Family Medical Leave Act, the 12 weeks if they have the accrued time. Because I don't think it's a contractual issue. I think it's part of the Family Medical Leave Act. If it's been done in the past, if they have the time. So I would like to make a motion that if people have 12 weeks of
we're about to modify.
sick time, that they should be able to utilize it for their family medical leave, if it's an approved family medical leave.
And I'll second it, giving our recording secretary an opportunity to catch up. I don't know if she wants to repeat that.
I have and it's nothing personal, this
Yeah, I
has
think-
nothing to do with any of that. It's in the contract, we have to amend the contract. We can't just amend contracts willy-nilly. There's bargaining, there's a process.
In the contract, it says we will follow the rules of the FMLA as is written in the federal government.
Unless there's a
Where is it?
collective bargaining
No,
agreement.
that's not what I'm saying
Our-
here. That's
Our
not what I'm
collective
saying.
bargaining
we
does not,
have.
our collective bargaining does not restrict the use of being able to use our
No,
sick
it
leave.
does not.
So what am I reading here that says the 5 days? What is that?
That is a different thing than FMLA. I'm sorry.
That's in the contract.
FMLA is in the contract, but it is a different issue. Those 5 days, I know they're called family medical days. It just happened to be the same words.
Yeah.
They're different issues.
They're listed in completely different sections of the
For ear infection.
Too many people talking.
Yeah, guys, one at a time, one at a
And
time.
then you have to take them to the doctor.
They are on the floor, you gotta have them come to the mic, Tony.
That's the kind of day that goes by
So it's just gonna be
Guys, one at a time. You guys need to go to the mic if you
The other
want.
thing is,
vote
we're
on that
talking about a
motion?
specific person. We should-
Well, we got a listen,
And that person should be here.
guys, we got a motion, and now we're in
non-personal
discussion.
too.
Yeah, remember to keep this,
Non-specific.
just because we don't say someone's name, we might be giving out enough information where someone could connect the dots, so we gotta be careful.
Again, she asked, she
No.
wanted.
Someone,
She asked me-
maybe a he.
Someone asked me to speak on her behalf.
No, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I think this specific issue, in light of the email, again,
But this is
I-
specific, my motion's not
well, I
specific.
know your motion's not on this specific issue, but I think this
We have two
specific
members.
case
We have
obviously
two
needs to
members in
get,
this situation.
looked at. I don't think,
We have some members.
I would feel very uncomfortable in deciding something right now. As to Melissa's motion, that's a big,
It's got to be
it's a
approved.
big change.
It's got to be approved family medical leave, so it's not as if people are just going to be taking 12 weeks off to go. It's approved family medical leave. They've accrued their time. They've earned their time. I don't see an issue with it. I don't see why we're not doing it to begin with. It's in the Family Medical Leave Law Act. I checked the F section that says subpart special rules applicable to employees of schools. I don't see anything in there, and maybe I missed it because I just checked it now, that says something about where they're not going to be, there are special rules for them, but it doesn't say anything that they shouldn't. So my concern is that we're not following the law, for one, and then for two, they earned it. Why? It doesn't even make sense that we wouldn't give it to them.
I think,
Wait a minute.
Mr.
Mike's
Co-
next,
Wait a
Mike's
minute.
next.
Let's hold on.
Michael,
Thank you,
you're
sir.
next.
Just for clarification, so I know how I'm going to vote on this motion, have we set a precedent? Have we given permission for any employees
10 days.
to use more than 10 days of their sick leave accrual to care for family members?
He may be aware of other
Yes,
people.
yes,
Was that
Okay, so
before me?
based,
yes.
okay. And
There may be
that's,
some before me that I don't know.
and I was going to say, at any time, if that sets precedent, is why I'm leaning to vote on this.
No, it's
Wait,
not.
hold on, Karen,
I would just like to make
Secretary.
sure I have your motion correct.
go ahead and read it back, Karen.
You basically made the motion to pay individuals for FMLA for the 12 weeks and utilize their sick time?
Whatever accrued time that they have available.
Sick time?
To allow staff to use accrued,
As it says in the law, where is it? It says it right here. Let me just specifically get it so that I can. Accrued paid vacation leave, paid sick, or family leave.
Where is that listed?
May I?
It's the Family Medical Leave Act, 825-100.
It's the frequently asked questions, and it says the employee must follow the employee's normal leave rules in order to substitute paid leave. That's an addition.
Carolina.
I really have great concerns that we are changing policy, changing contractual language without at least being advised by our attorney what effect this has for the future and future contract negotiations. I mean, we're amending things in the blind right now.
I don't think.
I don't think so.
Again, we don't have a policy of limiting the superintendent's getting in touch with the attorney. This meeting was posted, and the whole community was informed, certainly within 48 hours, if not before. If the superintendent felt that we had to weigh in with legal opinion before convening this meeting, we would have. I think we've heard enough information. We're quite a humble group here. If we make a decision that's incorrect, we can reverse it down the road. Right now, I think we've heard enough
Oh,
information.
Michael, hold on, that's, like,
Right now, we've heard.
the attorney did send us an email.
Okay.
to the request of this meeting. And basically, you know,
Okay, is that in the?
no, it was an email sent to all of us from the
Okay.
attorney. To basically be careful not to get into negotiations, because that's not why we're here.
Okay.
So, I mean, I am concerned that, you know, Melissa's motion basically is a major change. I'm not saying I'm opposed or I'm for it, I would feel that this is not the place all the time to get it. The other issue, I think that's something that needs to get, you know, my motion is something aside of, you know, the issue, the two issues, I guess, that we have currently. I think that's two different things. I think Melissa's motion is more broad. I would tread very lightly, and I guess it is our purview. We could, I guess, do that, but I think more needs to be known.
Perhaps the chairman has in the event that this motion fails, is there perhaps a motion that you would consider more
Well, we could certainly
appropriate?
meet with the attorney, all of us, and I would. We've got to be careful where we tread. Just I don't want to mess it up for us. I don't want to mess it up for them. I don't want to mess it up for anybody.
My thoughts are, Tony, is that it's an interpretation of the Family Medical Leave Act. It's not that we're adding to the contract. I'm reading at the contract, and it says on the 825-100 that allows eligible employees of a covered employer to take job-protected unpaid leave or substitute appropriate leave if the employee has earned or accrued it for up to 12 weeks in any 12 months.
That's the contract you're reading from?
No, I'm reading from the Mass General
Federal law.
The federal law. Thank you.
Now, the teacher's contract,
So
Written by
and it-
lawyers.
and it says.
We're paying a lawyer how much to tell us to be careful? Maybe I should call the lawyer before I cross the street. He's gonna tell me to be
Okay, sorry.
careful.
That's
Where's
okay. I
the
think it's
legal
over here.
direction here? We
It's
don't,
okay. I think
we
it's over
asked, we were not given anything beyond,
Mike, the legal direction was that this wasn't
To
the
be
forum
careful.
for that. That's what the legal direction was. I mean, it's, we're still the school committee, Mike. We can still decide or not
right,
decide.
and we've heard about a precedent that we've set, and basically the motion is following the precedent.
In the contract, what's the language in their contract
I'm reading right now.
that refers to,
On page 3.
that's what you're showing me? Sure, okay.
It reads, may I? It reads employees without loss of pay for, employees will be allowed without loss of pay per school year for personal illness and family emergency. That's under sick leave.
But that's not family medical, that's not FMLA. That is something different in our contract. We're
Andy,
talking
read that
about two
again, please.
things.
Andy, read that again, you just read. Andrew. I'm sorry, I called you Andy.
Employees will be allowed days of absence without loss of pay per school year for personal illness and family emergency. That's under sick leave and temporary leave of absence.
Is there any numbers associated with that sentence?
We accrue 15 per school year.
A total of 15 school days of absence without loss of pay.
We're allowed to accrue 15 per school year up to 200 days.
When a teacher calls out sick on the 16th day of a particular year, do they get paid for that?
If they don't have 16 days, no.
But if they have 116 days,
If they
if they have 100 sick days on the books, they will get paid for that
the
16th
16th
day.
day. And that has happened to me in the past. I had mono for 3 weeks. I used more than 15 sick days that year because I had accrued more than 15 days.
What happens when an employee takes maternity leave? Do they-
It's different. There's a whole section on maternity leave on the first page.
It's on here.
The first page. This is all contract. This was all negotiated.
FMLA was not negotiated.
Yeah.
that we
I'm not
would-
talking about FMLA, I'm talking about what's in the contract.
Right, but that's what's different, that you're talking about FMLA, and
Yeah,
you're
that's
talking
what-
about another piece of our contract. That other piece of our contract was not to protect us. It doesn't say it protects our job so that we can care for a terminally ill person. It's my son broke his arm and I have to have 2 days out. That covers me. My son has the flu and has to go to the hospital and he's in 4 days. That protects me. That's not the FMLA. I did intermittent FMLA when my mom was dying prior to Dr. Cobb. So it has been done. I use my sick time.
Can you ask him to clarify that piece again?
Okay, that section you read, where did you read that about the, as long as it follows,
part of the,
part of their contract?
No.
It's part of the
Frequently
guidance
asked
provided by the
questions.
federal government.
Where
as
is
part of
it?
the frequently asked
He
questions.
has it.
Oh, it's not in this?
So that's part of
it's
the,
in there.
that's part of the law then?
Yes, it is.
Where is it in here?
Why can't we just use his?
It says we will follow the federal guidelines.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the federal guidelines.
May I ask this while everybody's looking?
Sure.
I'm Sue Louvier, Westport Middle School. I am the building rep, but I'm not necessarily here as the building rep. I'd really like everyone to think about the name of our school district, Westport Community Schools. These are people that have worked in your system for over 20 years. They have given their time. They have earned their sick time. They're not trying to cheat anybody. They have dying parents, or someone is terminally ill. We really need to think. I'm not saying anyone's breaking the law. I'm not saying we're breaking any contract rules. I'm saying we're a community. And I think one of our issues is that our school system feels very, very broken, and we don't feel connected, and we don't feel cared for. And when you have worked for someone for 20+ years, you have given blood, sweat, and tears for this school system, I think they're just asking for a little bit of compassion and possibly respect. So that's what I'm not saying. I'm not lawyering. I'm not saying anything like that. I really would like you to consider that we are all professionals. We teach because we love teaching. We love children. We love the families that come along with those children. We don't take time off to try to cheat anybody or to try to go to the fair for a weekend or anything like that. These are people that are in a very dire situation, between a rock and a hard spot. They are not getting paid. They can't pay their mortgage. They can't pay their car payment. They have a terminally ill person that they're caring for. What choice do you make? It's a very hard decision to make. And so I truly am just appealing to you to think about your teachers as part of your community and part of your family.
Tony, I honestly don't know why this is an issue, why we just wouldn't approve it. I mean, that in itself is a reason, but not even if we didn't even consider that. The law says that we pay if they have accrued time. You know, I don't understand why as human beings we just wouldn't approve it. I mean, this isn't like they're not getting millions of dollars. This is time that they've earned.
And we've paid it before.
And we could do it, and you could do it with a side letter. You could say that this would not create precedent. There's a way to accomplish this in a different forum. This is not the place to do that. We should be talking in executive session. We're talking about a person, an individual, or two individuals. And we are setting very, very bad precedent moving forward on a motion like that.
I have offered that.
We've set the precedent, we've paid it before.
Which option, Dr. Cohen?
Side letter.
A side letter.
I was just going to reference, he has offered to allow one employee to use their accrued sick time, but not allow a different employee to use their accrued sick time based on the situation of care. And for us to make that agreement and play, this one is more important than this one, or this one is less important than this one, I can't do that.
I don't understand why we have to go into a room, into an executive meeting to make a decision that is just common sense and just the right thing to do. I just think we should do it. I mean, I don't understand why we have to do that. I mean,
Because the attorney told us that this is not the proper place to do this, that we're being asked to do. That's why.
Mr. Sullivan, how does the town side deal with this?
I
If you know.
can't say that we've had, I can't say that we've had similar situations or set precedent. I mean, if you're asking me how I would deal with it, I would ask the superintendent to report back in 2 days in executive session meeting and resolve the matter at that time.
Thank you. Again,
Thanks, Mike.
we've read excerpts from the contract, copies of the federal regulations. It's very clear that this decision maker is our representative, the superintendent, okay? And the superintendent's decision is a reflection of this board. He's making the decision on our behalf. I think it's a sad day when we were not aware of these situations until the WFT brought it before us. And a very strict adherence to the contract, I might add, is what's brought us to this table. So I'm particularly offended at any term willy-nilly or other terms that address this as a happenstance that we're just here. No, we're here because it's gone through a process that we were unaware of. Now we're at the table and we've had some testimony shared. My understanding is we've done it before. We're planning to do it again. That's the precedent. I'm one of 5 people, but I consider that precedent set, and that if people have accrued sick time and have to utilize the Family Medical Leave Act, then they are entitled, without question, to their accrued sick time. And they're able to continue as full-time employees, I might add. Any counteroffer of, well, if you become a part-time employee, is not an appropriate response to someone who's asked for their rightful use of days. So I would ask that we all vote in favor of this motion that's on the table.
Tony, can I ask you a question? I'm not a lawyer. Can I ask what a side letter is and what that would do, and to whomever?
I can
Through you?
answer that. It's basically an agreement that allows you to do something outside of the contract if the union agrees and the employee agrees. And you can put provisions in there that this is a one-time thing. This is not something that in the future, when we come back to bargaining, you're going to say, oh, you did it that time, therefore we want it all the time. So you can make exceptions to the contract with regard to that. I mean, the FMLA stuff is complicated. There's also this employee piece, the employees of schools, because it's applied to them differently because they're teachers in the classroom, and so it's the fact that they're not there, you got to replace. I mean, there's all kinds of, this is complicated stuff. I'm a lawyer. I know nothing about this stuff. All I know is that I've just heard that an offer for a side letter,
Do I have that?
the last paragraph,
Is that
an
in-
offer for
is
a
that in
side
the
letter
original
was
packet,
made
or
and
is
the
that
union rejected it. That to me tells me we're contract negotiating. And I am really uncomfortable that we're doing this in an open forum. And it's nothing personal.
Was this in the
I understand the
packet? Was this in my
personal
packet?
situation.
Yeah, it's in here somewhere.
Okay, because I have something here that someone had, because it's dated 5/28, May 28th, so this wasn't just new research. We've looked at this, we understand it.
This has been in the business office for months.
No, I'm asking if this is in the packet, I just didn't know where this,
Oh,
that's within the
It's
packet?
in the packet. Yeah, it's in here.
So,
Tony, if
and
I
these
may-
are the rules we go by, so
My question
I don't see it's
was-
that complicated.
Quick question.
Since you're standing.
Quick question. My question was, what do other town departments do? What do the police and fire department do in Westport?
I just asked that, and we don't know.
They
We're not
allow-
sure.
I
Or
can
we
research
can
it.
find that
I
out.
can
but
find out, I'll do that.
I'm more inclined to take Mr. Mike R. Sullivan. advice and maybe convene an executive, as soon as we can. And
That's, if I may, Tony, isn't that this is a negotiating, you see this as a piece of negotiating
well,
contract? Because it seems
I
like it's the
just don't.
law.
I think it's confused enough. I mean, let me just read this subsection. I don't even know what I'm reading from. I don't even know which contract this is, but if you read this sentence,
That's
I
the
mean,
FMLA.
so generally FMLA leave is unpaid leave. However, under circumstances described in this section, FMLA permits an eligible employee to choose to substitute accrued paid leave for FMLA, and the employee does not. If an employee does not choose to substitute accrued paid leave, the employer may require the employee to substitute accrued paid leave. So in other words, I'm reading that as if they do have accrued leave, then if you want to get paid, you have to take your accrued leave. That's how I take that. And
Require you.
Where are you reading that from? Tony?
I don't know. I don't know which.
May I see?
Contract, I don't know. I mean, my point is
Read the
that
section. The section numbers.
we approve something tonight, and next thing you know, tomorrow everyone's on. I'd rather err on the side of caution here.
Highlighted part.
And where's that from?
That's,
Where's that?
that is that's the government.
No, I'd like to add,
So the substitution of accrued sick time, accrued sick or family leave is limited by the employer's policies governing
Exactly.
use of such leave.
Which.
So all this
Yeah,
basically
contract.
still throws it back. I don't know.
But where is that?
I'd
where
like
is
to
that
add
from?
that.
That's the government
and
website.
having been involved in Family Medical Leave Act, as this legislation was rolling out, to me it's very clear, because there was a lot of options considered before Family Medical Leave Act was put through, and to me it is very clear. And in the case of accrued...
DOL.gov. Sorry, Michael.
I'll just wait.
I'll
Go
throw
ahead.
it.
In the case of accrued sick time, if people want to get paid, they can't use other banks that they have to use their sick time first, and that, it's all spelled out. And what we've had before us here is questions on very narrow particular decisions, and the decisions are based on, are we going to limit the amount of their accrued sick time? It is a very big act, but I'm sure every applicant or employee who's come before the schools to ask to utilize their time has looked at it. So they've come before the schools to ask, are they entitled to use more than the originally 5, and then it's 10, but then we're hearing it's been unlimited. So I'm going to go with the unlimited until we have, and I would, right now, my support is that they can use their accrued days until there isn't any left, if they fall under the Family Medical Leave Act, until I'm convinced that we've never done it before. We've set precedent, let's follow what we have done, and we can't.
Number one, precedence is a pattern of behavior.
Oh,
At
I know what
least-
precedence is.
Let him finish.
So one instance would not create precedence. More than one instance, the more times you do it, it does create precedence. Personally, would I want to give everybody the chance to do this? Absolutely. But I'm also charged, as an officer of the school committee, to protect your contract and the future of your contracts and the future of your budgets, because all these decisions have a financial impact. So absolutely, you can change your contract right here, right now, and continue to do so by making motions and votes. I'm just cautioning you that when you do, you will incur financial cost that will perpetuate from now till forever. So, and that is what I asked the lawyer to tell us. Can you fall into this? Yes, absolutely. Hey, it would make my life a lot easier if you made the decision for me. Because then I don't have to be the one who stands between a parent and their kid, between a parent and a loved one. I don't want to be that person. But you hired me to put myself in that position to protect the interests of the district as well as trying to protect the interests of the staff. And the only thing I have to go by is the law and the contract. So if you want to change the policy or the contract, then I will follow what you tell me to do. But I'm just cautioning you that that's what will happen. So,
Andrew first, Melissa.
I think I have 4 points. Number 1, we're not trying to change our contract. We are trying to use what we have earned and what federal law entitles us to use. We're not under negotiations. A memorandum of agreement was offered to us. Under that scenario, I didn't propose that. Under that scenario, I have to break bad news to somebody, whichever decision I go with. Because if I allow it for one, then I need to tell the other person, no, I'm sorry. We agreed for one, but we're not agreeing for the other. Can I tell you why? Can I explain to you why? I can't. Or I have to tell the person who has this agreement, I know you have this agreement, but I can't do it. And so now you're not going to be paid. How are you going to pay your mortgage? I don't know. Why can't you use your entitled sick time? I don't know. So he said he doesn't want to be that person. I have to be that person. Because now that's the position that I'm in.
All right, and I want to end this by saying, go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is a time-sensitive
Afterwards.
issue. There is a teacher right now who's not being paid. And there's about to be another teacher who's not being paid. And these teachers are dealing with terminally ill relatives or seriously ill relatives of their immediate family. And I don't know how we treat our teachers that way.
So for the record, I do not believe that this is a contractual issue. I believe it's Family Medical Leave Act. I do not believe, so I want Karen to write that. And 2, I can't understand how we would think that we can't pay our accrued time to individuals who are caring for members of their family who are seriously ill. Would we expect them to come in with a seriously ill child or a seriously ill parent? How would you feel? How would any of us feel if our employer said, well, you have accrued time, but you're not going to be able to use it. You have to leave your child at the hospital. I mean, I don't get it.
I sound like a broken record, and I'm sorry, but it's not. I would love to give everybody millions of dollars in raises. It's not in the budget. We don't have it. It's dangerous, the steps we're taking right now. So, very dangerous.
We're not giving teachers money. We're allowing them to use their accrued sick time that they've earned, that it's allowed by our contract. The district is not giving these teachers money.
If it's a budgetary issue, then we wouldn't have 15 days accrued each year in our contract. If we're accruing them, that means that money is already budgeted for. So it's not an additional purse that we're going to dig into.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If I could make another suggestion, if one thing you could consider is it is the superintendent's discretion to extend this. And without changing the contract, you could direct him to use his discretion in these particular cases if you feel that that is what you want to do. I don't think you go outside the contract to do that, but I'll throw that out for a possibility.
Look, I think we all sit in this room and watching at home. None of us wants to be that person to make the decision or that person to make the decision. I don't want to make that decision. I think the decisions that we have to make is to get rid of these ambiguities.
I was going to jump out.
Thanks, Mike.
I couldn't tackle that.
So that these issues don't come up. It shouldn't be. We shouldn't have all these gray areas. I don't get it. I really don't get it. Teachers are allowed to accrue a bunch of sick time. God bless them. I don't think I ever had a job that ever gave me any sick days. Whatever, I don't know. But that's what they have. That's what others before us have agreed to, and it seems to be a pressing issue, or maybe two. Some. So again, Mr. Sullivan, I do like your suggestion. We could ask Dr. Colley to use his discretion and take care of these issues, but I also like Mr. Sullivan's prior suggestion that we convene as soon as possible. At that point, whether it's executive, at that point we can talk more specifics and get rid of the gray areas in these contracts. And I tend to believe, Michael, I think we did it in the past, and I tend to, as far as precedent, yeah, I mean, how far back do you go? I don't, and again, I don't know who's been paid for in the past and how long ago, or it's happened not too long ago.
It was like
2006. Is that still precedent? Is that not? I think for us to make that decision here tonight is a little premature.
And again, what I think, in light of the suggestion that's made, we are empowered to make decisions, whether comfortable decisions or not. We as a body could make a decision instructing the superintendent to
Let's try to deal with the motion first.
well, it's within the motion to follow.
That's what the motion says.
That's not what the
And,
motion says.
but what I would wonder is if we could have an agreement here at the table from the Federation that this is not a precedent-setting decision.
Put it in writing.
You've indicated this is there is situations that are current, and while we are committed to convening and taking this further, can we make a temporary decision to, would that be more comfortable for Dr. Colley to make a temporary decision based on the current cases before us that require use of their sick time and that it's not precedent setting? I mean, is that?
And then you can bring it to negotiation.
I mean, I think we're doing the same thing, like we're doing that.
There's always the time to make the right decision is now. We're here, the Family Medical Leave Act says up to 12 weeks, people have accrued their time. If they haven't accrued it, then I'm sorry, they don't get paid. If they have accrued it, then they get paid. It's simple. I mean, I'm sorry, I know people think it's negotiating. Again, for the record, I don't believe it's negotiating, I believe it's following the Family Medical Leave Act so people can get their due time. I mean, why? We're going to go into executive to make the same decision. Let's just do it and move on to the next item.
Well, for the record, I got to abstain from that.
Can I just say something quickly? I'm confused, as I totally agree with Melissa. I absolutely agree with her, hands down. It is an FMLA situation. Contractually, we are allowed to accrue up to 200 days. What would be the purpose of accruing 200 days if you are never allowed to use them? And you're allowed to accrue additional if you show perfect attendance. What would be the point? What would be the point?
That was my question.
Yes, you can accrue them, and that is contractual. Carolina is absolutely correct in that. But Melissa's talking about a separate situation. If you have earned the days because you have gone to work every single day and you have a sick person at home, how can you tell them that they are not allowed to use those days? It's not coming out of anybody else's pocket. It's my pocket that I've let you reserve because you owe that to us. That is in our negotiation. That is a benefit of ours. That is already budgeted. So you can't say, where are we going to find the money? You found the money because that's how you negotiated with the WFT. So if that money is already allocated to be used on sick time, it should be able to be used for sick time, whether it be mother, father, child. Because at the end of the day, this is your job, but number one is your family.
Andrew, then Carolyn.
I was just going to point out that per our contract, if you retire in the Westport community schools and you have your 200 sick days, the school district will end up paying you for those regardless.
If you're up to 6.
Sorry,
No, never mind.
No, you can have it.
No, I was just gonna say, it has to do with what your rate is.
It does have to
Right,
do with your
but
age. It comes with, it's a retirement benefit.
There is a stipulation that,
It's a retirement benefit.
yes.
And what's the pay per day? Is it just the regular?
Off the top of my head, I would say
$25.
it's-
There's an amount, there's an allocation.
It's $25 per day, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
Kelly?
So I just want to reiterate, this is a contract issue. A side letter was offered. It was not accepted. We are modifying the contract if we do this. And it is not that we may not agree that we should be doing this. This is the wrong forum. You know, this allows the union to come to us at any point when they don't like what's in there and ask us to change it. That's what
I'm
negotiating
not
is for.
asking you to change the contract at all. What have I asked you to change? What have I asked you to change?
You started your conversation saying he's not doing anything wrong, it's within his discretion. And he gave 5 days and he extended it to 10 days. He's not doing anything in violation of the contract. Because my first question was, why haven't you filed a grievance? And you said, we can't file a grievance. He's not in violation, he hasn't done anything wrong.
You said I'm
And
asking-
and he's not violating the law. No, he's not violating federal law either.
Section 825-100 makes it very clear that they're
It's not
entitled to
violating-
use their accrued. It would be redundant to put that in the
No.
contract.
Pursuant to the
I call
employer's
for everyone to come
policies.
to their senses. I call for the vote.
You asked me, you said that I was asking for you to change the contract. What am I asking you to change? You-
Go ahead.
Can I answer for her? Because you're
No,
not.
she's the one who's saying that. I would like her to tell me what I'm
All right,
asking her to
okay, through the
change.
chair, through the chair.
Through the chair. We're not asking to change the contract here. But a precedent-setting decision does by default change the contract.
That's right.
Because it binds the person in the seat forever and ever into the future to make the same decision over and over.
If that's true, it's
However-
already been done.
So, through the chair, may I suggest something that I think was suggested by
let's do an
Mr. Sullivan,
executive
Board of
session.
Selectmen?
Not when there's a motion on the floor
No,
and a
it's
call
still
for a
discussed.
vote.
Let's vote.
Let's vote.
And I'm going to abstain. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
Yeah.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Can I clarify as to what the motion was?
Carrie, want to read back the motion, please? Madam Secretary?
The motion was to, individuals, their FMLA for the 12 weeks and utilize the sick time.
Thank you.
What's
All
the
right,
next
let's
thing?
move on.
I'm gonna, for the time being, I'd like to withdraw the final agenda item, which is the Westport Middle School changes. But I'd like to retain the right to possibly bring it up in the future.
I'm sorry, Andrew. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I'd like to withdraw to talk about the final agenda item, but I'd like to retain the right to possibly address it in the future if we so choose.
And we're talking about the middle school.
The Westport Middle School changes.
So you're willing to, you don't want to discuss that tonight?
Correct.
Does anybody else want to discuss that tonight? All right, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Did you not want the forms? That's all set too?
Well, we
The
pretty
forms
much went
we-
over
we
that.
addressed.
All in favor?
Aye.
What's this?
It's the new floor.
What am I going to sign it for?
I don't know. I haven't done it right before, so this is for me to go on. You're the chairman. That was the instructions in the old, trying to follow the form.